People have some questions. So the way we're going to do it is field the clusters of 3 questions each, so we make sure we're getting the questions from the floor. Please confine yourself to the question, and if you have some preparatory comments to set up your question, that's fine. But don't deviate too far from that. We want to really concentrate on the questions and responses and create a dialogue. So, does anyone would like to step forward with in terms of a question? Okay, we have Mac here for one. And is it okay if I ask you to identify yourself? You don't have to, but I just think of breaking some of the ice. If you could, please do so. Mac, would you want to start? Stand up.
Sorry, do we want to use the microphone? The cordless mic?
Yeah, we can do that. If you can travel around, you can do the travel.
Yeah, it just works better if that one is turned off while this one is on.
Right.
We'll get some feedback if they're both on at the same time.
Okay, I'll turn this off now.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to ask 3 questions, because
Oh, no, Mac. A lawyer, you don't get paid.
Well, for Mr. Taft, I was wondering if you broke down the healthcare spending between the workers, the doctors, and the nurses versus the healthcare executives. We see that healthcare executives we pay them to be the 1% with that 273,000 figure. I'm curious what percentage is going to the managers, the healthcare boards. We see how they waste money and they spend it. They have $100, $200 bottles of wine for lunch. And is that all really necessary, and what portion are they getting?
Okay, we'll save the questions.
Okay, and then for Shannon, I had a question about you were perilously close to recommending a sales tax, and I suggest to you the sales tax is a tax on the poor because, like lotteries, which is also a tax on the poor, and cigarettes and tobacco, when you look at the proportion of the income for poor people, sales tax it comes down to food on the table, but for rich people it's no more than an annoyance. And I suggest that you don't recommend a sales tax because that's another tax on the poor. And how about looking at revenue? What about if inheritance was limited to, say, $1 million per beneficiary? That would create enough money, I'd suggest, to give everybody in Canada an income of $50,000 and poverty would be wiped out in a heartbeat. And Ms. Sergetson, thank you very much for your information on inequality, and I would ask you to consider looking behind that and what justifies it. And I'd suggest it's simply not justifiable when we look at the fact that each person's situation is not their cause. Nobody deserves to be rich, nobody deserves to be poor. It's all the accident of birth and the luck of the draw, and the inequality is just totally unacceptable.
Okay,
thanks.
Thank you, Mac. Yes, Mac. Oh, and by the way, I've just instituted a new rule. This is Bill Maher. The new rule is I'm allocating 1 question per person, and then you just get in the queue there. Okay, great. Over here, the lady here.
Hi, I'm Eda Luz. How can you convince Albertans that flat tax is actually beneficial to them? I have arguments about that. And people think that the middle class will have to pay too much and it will hurt them. And they're not very welcoming the idea. And maybe we should control the way the money is being spent. Is there anything we can do about that?
And one more question before we just over here. Gentleman,
Yes, hi, my name is Richard. My name is Richard, and I'm chair of the Edmonton Chapter Council of Canadians. By the way, it's not a little cheap. We have some pamphlets back there that are relevant, I think, today. My question is for everybody up on the panel here. I see the same thing happening. I see the conservatives getting it, I see the right getting it, I see the neoliberals getting it. Certain mechanisms that seem to persist in this society, which I'm not sure how it continues, but certainly I myself see the voting system as being one of the main problems. I'm wondering what your opinions on, to make a long story short, are on proportional representation, and as that as being a line of defense against this inequality and unfair taxation.
Okay, great questions. We'll come back to the others now. We'll just take a break now and have the presenters respond to the questions, and they can I hope they remember your questions there.
Sure, I will. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Mac, I believe it was, for asking the question about the sales tax, because I guess it's clear that I need to clarify my perspective there. I certainly didn't mean to recommend a sales tax by any stretch. That is in fact one of the things that separates, the additional things that separates the perspective of the UBC School of Public Policy in Parkland, the Conference Board of Canada in Parkland. And if you're concerned about inequality, you want to look at other ways of generating revenue, and you don't want to look to a sales tax. Sales tax is a barrier, even in cases where you're given rebates if you're in low income. Even just having to front the money to pay for basic necessities of life, even knowing there may be a rebate coming in the future, can be a huge barrier to people securing the things they need to live a decent life. It's not the way forward if you're concerned about equality. So am I supposed to deal with the whole package of questions? Yes?
Well, whatever you feel that you
All right.
would like to.
Sure. I'll address the good question then on messaging in relation to taxation. I would suggest, and I guess what I try to do in presentations like this is change how we talk about taxes. Taxes aren't a burden, something to avoid, something to resent. They're a way that we participate in society, that we pool our resources to purchase things we need that we can't secure individually. They're a way we participate in our government, in our democracy. And I would suggest that changing that frame, that way we discuss taxes, is a way forward that might hopefully open the door to real change in terms of policies. And I absolutely agree that efficiency and transparency in the expenditure of government resources is basic. One of the resentments that fuels this anti-tax rhetoric that you hear bandied about that out there, to the extent that you do, is rooted in the belief that government is inherently corrupt, that money is always misspent. And not to say that this doesn't occur, obviously it does, but that frame of government as corrupt, as government as inefficient, as government as not serving the interests of the public is a neoliberal frame that's imposed on people who would see benefit in shrinking government. While we need to watch government, ensure efficiency, advocate for transparency, we also need to hold on to the ideal as a way that we all work together, that government can serve our purposes, that a vibrant and efficient and functional public sector is in our interest. I think I'll stop there and end it off.
Kevin?
Thanks, Shannon. Two related questions came up, or points I interpreted. Etta and Mac both asked issues relating to controlling public sector spending. Mac, wherever he is now, raised a question about healthcare executives having $100 bottles of wine and so on. And Etta talked about the need to control public spending. And clearly, as Shannon says, that's important. I want to challenge you. Having that debate is doing exactly what the 1% wants you to have. It keeps you from focusing on other issues. Pause for a minute. You can go on the government website and you can find the expense account down to the cell phone call of healthcare executives. You cannot get any detail at all about what the private sector deducts from their royalties. Okay, and that dwarfs anything that any healthcare executive wasted in Alberta 1,000 times over. You are losing that money because those royalties belong to you, and you are foregoing revenue so that the 1% can have $100 bottles of wine at every lunch if they want. They can spend their days in unbelievably luxurious offices. They can fly private jets to private landing strips at the oil sands plants, on and on and on. Has that ever come up in the media? No. We become too obsessed. We are led to particular debates by groups like the Canadian Taxpayers and many other organizations, and when we engage in those debates, we are doing exactly what they want. They want us to look there so that we don't look anywhere else. I feel strongly about this, as you can probably tell. So as Shannon said, we need to change how we talk about things. We need to be asking how much is being deducted from the taxes and royalties that are our due as Albertans. It's a lot. Maybe I'll stop there
Well,
too.
the
'Cause we have-
proportional system, you have written on that a bit.
a little bit. You know what? My thinking on proportional voting, proportional representation is evolving. For some years, I was a very adamant supporter of it. I'm not convinced anymore that it's the biggest issue, the biggest concern, Richard, with our voting system. There's pros and cons that become a little bit technical. I am more concerned about how our parties and our political process is financed. I was a big fan of the public funding per vote that Jean Chrétien brought in and Stephen Harper abolished. If we're going to invest in anything in our society, we should invest in our democracy. So I'm less committed to proportional representation today than I was 5 years ago. That might change back the other way in another 5 years.
Okay, Lori.
Okay, thank you. So just a comment about inequality. I certainly am in agreement, and that there's no level playing field. We don't all start from the same place, and it's not like we all begin at the same level and then it's just merit. It's how hard we work. It's not about that at all. A lot of us aren't even on the field. We're way below it, and there's all sorts of different reasons for that. So this is kind of a myth that I think, it's kind of a neoliberal myth, a right-wing myth that we just work hard. There must be some kind of personal deficit. Something's wrong with you if you're not able to make it in rich Alberta, right? That's what we hear. So there's some kind of personal deficit, and of course that's not true at all. It is really very much about the system within which we work, and some people experience tremendous, tremendous barriers. And so, inequality it's not about people being individually responsible. It really is all of us collectively, and that we need to overcome that growing inequality in our province. Just in terms of the other things, well, certainly, it's a tragedy, I think, that it's a little over half of us voted in the last provincial election, like a very low voter turnout. That was actually an increase from sort of our all-time low in 2008 when we had like 43%, something like that. And then it was, I think, 53, 54 in 2012. So half of the citizens aren't voting. People aren't engaged. Like, how can we get people interested? And certainly at the doors, people say, well, it doesn't matter. If I vote, people I want in won't get in. And so that makes a bit of an argument for proportional representation then, because every vote does count then, because a percentage of the party will get in because of that kind of a vote system. So, I think that would be a better way, but I don't disagree with Kevin that we have other big issues in our democracy about how the funding happens in Alberta, and just the tremendous power that companies, oil and gas sector has, and the contributions they give to the Wildrose and the Conservative Party. Like, it's huge, huge money, and really makes it extremely unfair. And I think my colleagues here have spoken well about the other pieces. So.
Okay, great. I'm just going to add just a quick point, though, that abuse of the chair. On places where they have proportional representation, you tend to get more coalition governments, and on average, coalition governments are more progressive than other governments, and I do have some information and data on that.